Good morning, everyone. This is Cassidy Carson from the CC and JT Amateur Hour, wearing my Nevada Author Network hat. And as you can see, I'm actually flying solo today because my partner in crime, JT, is unfortunately a little under the weather. Aside from that, we're looking forward to a wonderful interview with our guest for this week, Terri Farley, who is a well-known author of the Phantom Stallion series, among other things. So before I throw this over to Terri, the Nevada Author Network is a collaboration between Two More Books, LLC, and the Sierra Arts Foundation. We like to feature members of the Sierra Arts literary community and highlight the wonderful work that we have happening here in Northern Nevada. We have a great literary community. So we thank the Sierra Arts Foundation for being our partner in this. And with that, welcome, Terri, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm never good at this, but I'll give it a shot. I write books. um, I write mainly animal books.
Mm-hmm.
If I have any kind of a reputation, it's for the Phantom Stallion books. I started out with HarperCollins, and now they're published by Simon and Schuster, and there are they're published in 27 countries around the world. So
Wow.
that is extremely cool. And being in touch with those kids and adults has been super. But I'll backtrack just a little bit. I started writing because I loved horses. I have always loved all animals, but I grew up in Los Angeles and I was like super, super allergic to everything with fur. However, my parents would let me go ride once a month. They'd take me to a riding stable that was along the LA River. And then I would come home and wheeze all night and they would sit up with me. But I thank them for that. Okay, I'll tell you my trauma story. Okay. I was a good kid. It was my brother who always got in trouble. So every day I would walk home from school. We lived in a neighborhood, even though we were in Los Angeles, and there were trees, and there were a few people who had swimming pools. So they had really high fences around their backyards. And I always walked by this one yard where I assumed they had a swimming pool. But one day when I was walking by it, I heard this sound. I'm going to make it for you. And even though I was a city girl and only was around horses once in a while, I knew what that sound was. So I climbed up the tree that was next to the fence and I looked over and there was a horse in there. I won't give you the entire story, but let me just say that I started riding that horse. It wasn't my horse, but nobody was home at that house. And when I finally got caught, that's when I started writing books, writing horse stories, because then I could have all of the adventures safely.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been writing about since I was 8 years old. And it's like anything else. Kids get credit for something. Maybe they're a good cellist. Maybe they play soccer or t-ball or jiu-jitsu, something like that. And you kind of go in the direction where you're getting that credit.
Right.
And people always liked my stories. So, plus it's an adventure. You can have, and I tell kids this when I do school visits, you can do anything you want, no matter how dangerous, no matter how illegal, if you put it in your stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is, I mean, and, like you write, you can have these supernatural experiences.
Right.
That are so fun. So I started writing. I got a couple of awards in high school and college. And then what really helped launch my professional writing career was Nevada Magazine asked me to do a story about the last great cattle drive.
Mm.
And I rode 10 days 10 days on a cattle drive that went with real cows, real horses, and mostly real cowboys across the Black Rock Desert.
Oh, wow.
from the Black Rock Desert to almost Susanville.
Oh my gosh.
Back roads, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, and not streets. And it was wonderful. I mean, I'm not a good writer. I can usually stay on, but I must have been going on endorphins because I was not sore one day. It was fantastic. And one of the days when I was writing, it had rained really hard the night before, and there was like steam coming up off the ground. And I wrote in the back because the little Mustang that I was riding, not my horse, but his name is Ace and he's in my books. He liked to show off. He liked to put on his own private rodeos so that the real cowboys could see me try to latch on. So I rode in the back and I saw down this slot canyon what I thought was a white horse. I mean, I'm by myself in back of the herd. There's all this steam coming up, this supernatural thing. So I'm staring. Is that really a white horse down this little slot canyon? But as I was looking at that, Ace saw a cow break from the herd, and he was a very good cow pony, and he went right after it. You know, like you see sheep herding dogs,
Right.
that was Ace. And so we followed it. We brought the cow back into the herd. And when I came back, I looked. I forced him to go back. He did not want to go. We wanted to go with the cows. But he came back, looked, there was nothing there. So I don't know if I imagined it or if there really was a lone horse. The young male horses get kicked out of the herd. They're called bachelors. And so you do see lone Mustangs once in a while. And I started thinking, well, what if there was this white horse that came and went so quickly? People thought he was a ghost. So that's where the Phantom Stallion idea came from. And I was super lucky that I found an agent fairly quickly. And there were lots of bumps in the road that I'm sure most authors know about. But I was able to sell this book that I wrote while I was teaching full-time about a wild white stallion and the girl he had a relationship with. And I always let the girls have the adventures because when I was growing up, Black Stallion, which I loved, and other like Lad Dog, all of the animal adventure stories had a boy as the main
Right.
character. So not happening in my books. So
No, that's great.
yeah.
And I
So
know from personal experience, I think girls go through a phase where we're kind of fascinated by horses. And I know I did. One of my favorite books growing up was called Pounding Hooves. And it was
ooh,
about, I think she was a Palomino or something, but I believe that may have been a female main character. I haven't read it for years, but
I'll have to look for it. I don't know that. I thought I knew all of those.
it's a great one. Like I said, I was just absolutely fascinated. I did not have horses myself, but my aunt and uncle did. So during the summer, inevitably, I would be staying with my cousins and we get to go riding a lot. And they always put me on the old horse. Her name was Cindy. She was a beautiful old horse. So your descriptions of your experience with the cattle drive and everything, and I also have experience with Nevada Magazine. So that story really resonated with me. But I feel that the way you describe that is a good reflection of your experience as a storyteller, because obviously you do have a lot of experience. And I was really drawn into what you were talking about. How much importance do you place on actually having experiences before you write a story? Or do you more often than not have the story just come to you and you kind of, as you mentioned, whatever you imagine you can write about? So are you more of an experiential writer or an imagination writer?
Well, yes, is the answer. My 2 college degrees are in English literature and journalism.
Oh, wow.
So my brain goes in both directions. I do a lot of research and I do interviews, which I think are invaluable. But I also, the what if part of my brain, it has to be kind of compressed a lot of the time. I mean, I will see something on television. I will see one of my stories. I wrote romance too before I wrote children's literature. And one of those stories, I called it Hexmaker's Daughter. They called it Shadows in the Flame. Nice words, but anyway, came when I was walking down the street in Virginia City, cutting school with two other teachers. And it was a windy day. And up, I saw a face up in an upstairs window in one of those old places. And all of a sudden, I had a story. And my friends had walked on without me. They came back and we looked up there, and I looked really, and they had metal shutters on that window. I did not see a face up there.
Oh, wow.
And it turned out to be a ghost story. So, like I said, I've got the what if side of my brain that will take off on its own and bring me back stories. But then I love research. I love research, especially historical. And one of my first rejections was a book that did eventually sell, but it shows you how my brain meshes or doesn't with other people. The two rejections that came in back to back. One said, I did not correctly convey the texture of the times. The next one said, don't gag me with your research. Okay. So I figured that meant I was right in the middle between those two. So I do tons of online research. I love to get out on the range and do research there and be with the wild horses and smell the sagebrush and hear the birds that are part of that environment, that wild environment. And, but also, I think everything I have written has an element of fantasy because, right brain, left brain. I don't know who said that in one of your earlier podcasts, but that definitely is my writing process. Do you think that would be interesting to people?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. One of the things I do is before I write a chapter, before I write a sentence, and the one time I didn't do this, I had to backtrack. I sit down with a big pad of index cards. Big, at least 100. At least, probably more. And I carve out at least an hour of time where I'm not going to be disturbed by kids, animals, spouses, anything. And I write down on cards everything I know about the book. So I may have a card that has the title. I might have a card that says, research diamondback rattlesnakes. I might have a card that has a description of hooves hitting wet ground. I might have one that shows two people sitting at a table with a lot of scarring on it. And I keep going and going and going. Anything that pops into my mind. This is not like outlining at all, but it helps me build a skeleton of the story. So I go for at least an hour or until I really am sort of wrung dry. And then I carve out more time. And my writing process evolved when I was teaching full time and had two small children. And I find that if I stick with that, I come up with books. So that's a good thing.
That makes sense.
Yes. And then I look at all of the cards and I start trying to put them in some kind of order. So, the title probably comes first. And then I try to, and, as I'm doing this, I realize that between number of the cards, and I realize between card 27 and 28, a miracle has to happen. So I go in and I start filling in with more cards. And I don't differentiate between the cards. I don't color code them or anything. Later, I might do that. But I just have all of these cards, and numbering them and putting a rubber band around them is really important. I have tried doing this online on my computer. It's not the same for my brain. My brain wants tactile. So I do that. And also the rubber band and the numbers are important because they will get knocked off your desk.
Right.
And usually I put that right next to my computer, and usually I don't have to look at them again. Because
just in case.
The skeleton is in my head of my story. So that's how I do it. It's kind of old timey, but it has worked through 30 plus books. So I'm sticking with it.
Oh, definitely. If it works, don't knock it.
Yeah.
I have to say that really resonates with me because my process, I also wrote while I had young kids under feet. And actually, my youngest daughter has written over 100 books at this point. So
Wow. Wonderful. Which genre?
she writes urban fantasy and she
Cool. Very
also
cool.
lives
That's what
in
my
Nevada.
son does. My son does that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to watch the next generation. And it sounds like maybe one of my grandkids is also picking it up now. But trying to work the writing process around things like family and pets and teaching, I know is very intensive because actually my oldest is a middle school teacher and we want to hang out on the weekend, but she's busy grading ultimately or something. So finding that process that works for you and fitting it into those free moments that you can get is really important.
I teach a workshop called Muse on the Run,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it's about. It's about catching, constructing your own butterfly net to catch
Right.
those ideas and keep them in some form. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one reason I started wearing blazers at school was because they had pockets, and I would be giving a lecture and I'd think, what if? And I would scribble something down. I'd still be talking, but I'd scribble down one word on a
Mm-hmm.
piece of paper, shove it into my pocket. And when I came home, I had like a recipe box where I'd shove all of these little scraps of paper, and I still have it. If I ever run out of ideas,
That's
I've got
too
that.
funny. I inevitably come across post-it notes because when I was working full time, I would write an idea on a post-it note and stick it in my purse. And then
Yes.
at the end of the day, I would put it in a pile somewhere and the piles get shifted. Like you said, they get knocked off. So I'm very familiar with that feeling. But you write a lot about horses in the West and that type of thing. But you've also got a book called Seven Tears into the Sea. So that sounds very different from the Phantom Stallion series. What actually inspired you to shift to a more coastal maritime kind of story?
Well, when I signed the contract for the Phantom Stallion series, there was a clause in there that said I wouldn't write any horse books for another publisher for a certain amount of time. So I had this idea in my head for years. An old roommate when I was in college in the dorms was Scottish, and she had told me about selkies. And selkies are shapeshifters that can go from being seals to being humans. And I'd always loved that idea. And I'd done some research on them. And I thought, this is the perfect time for me to propose this book because an editor who had been at the house, the editor who acquired the Phantom Stallion series, moved to another publishing house. And she wanted to buy a book from me, but she knew very well what my limitations were. And, I'm making this sound really easy. You should see my stack of rejections and other writers in this community, supportive writers in this community, know that there have been years where, oh, yeah, I sold a series. That's wonderful. Can I sell another book? No. It's
Right.
does, you know, even though I had pretty good sales figures, it's hitting the right editor on the right day. I swear it's some magical connection. Anyway, so I talked to Julia and she said, well, just think about something you've always wanted to write that didn't have horses. Well, as it turned out, there is a seahorse wind chime in Seven Tears into the Sea. I had to plant a sort of horse in there someplace. But I was fascinated by this legend and I transplanted it to the Northern California coast from Scotland or Ireland. It's an ancient Celtic legend that predates Christianity. So these, some people might call them monsters, but
Mhm.
they weren't good or bad. They were and that, I keep going back to sort of feminism because if you look, with my horse books, and also if you look at the Celtic legends of the Selkie, they were different for female Selkies and male Selkies. So the female Selkies would be out there swimming around like a seal, and they would decide to come ashore. They would come ashore, they would peel off their seal skin, stand there naked, throw their sealskin on the beach, and dance naked in the moonlight. And
Mhm.
then a fisherman would come along, see them, kidnap them, take them home as their Selkie bride. And the woodcuts, these ancient woodcuts that you see of the Selkie brides, usually they would be holding a child, looking out a window at the sea with what was obviously longing.
Mm-hmm.
But he would hide her skin or destroy her skin. However, when the legend does go on, and doesn't always, but when the legend goes on, one of her children, the weird one, the dark one, the one that has webbing between his fingers, finds his mom's skin, and together they go back to the sea. I mean, she leaves everybody else, but okay, she goes back to the sea, and magically he can breathe underwater. Okay, that's the female part of it. The male legend, the guy swims ashore, takes off his sealskin, hides it. He's perfectly dressed. I don't know where he gets the clothes. And strides down the beach to a pub where he meets and seduces women. And then when he's done, he goes back to the beach, gets his sealskin, puts it on, and comes back again in 7 years. So that tells you more about the culture than it tells you about Selkies.
Right.
In my book, it's a little different. He has an actual relationship. He's also kind of a teenager. And this is my only YA book. And I taught high school at Worcester High School in Reno for years, and also middle school at Trainer Middle School. Plus, I'm a mom, and that's where I get the brains
Yep.
of my characters. And like the two of you, I do some gender jumping in my books. And so far, no one's criticized me for writing in a male viewpoint sometimes. But the female viewpoint, third person, very, very, very close, like I have my head on their shoulder, is most natural for me, except in Seven Tears. And that I didn't realize till I was writing that it was first person. So
yeah, which is very different.
Yes, it is. But well, she sleepwalks for one thing. The main character sleepwalks. So I had to get in there.
So is it first person present tense then? It's
No.
pretty immediate, or is past tense?
Yes, I think so. I'd have to go back and look, but I think it's past. I'd have to look. That's so silly.
It's so funny how we forget what we've written.
Well, and it's self-hypnosis. I swear it is. When I am writing a book, I am there. And luckily, my children grew up fine. We've talked about that. And unless somebody was bleeding, they were not too disturbed me. You know, if they couldn't find their socks, that was not my problem.
Right.
When I was writing. But usually I got up at 5:00 to write. And then I started teaching half days. So I would have about 2.5 hours at home undisturbed. And I didn't answer the phone because I do really have a hard time writing well if I'm not in that zone.
Oh, yes, I understand. JT is very much he can go out in public and, it doesn't matter what kind of is going on around him. And he just sits down and focuses. I'm the opposite. I'm sequestering myself upstairs at this point because I get distracted too easily.
Yeah, me too.
So with all of the books that you've written, do you have any plans for future publications? Are there any projects that you're working on right now?
Well, oddly enough, I have 2 books coming out next year, The Year of the Horse, and my very, very first picture book is coming out. And my first experience with picture books was when I was writing Phantom Stallion, and I tried to write this police horse picture book, and my editor told me to keep doing what I did well. So that was the end of that. But my agent actually was talking to an editor at a cocktail party. I mean, this is so what I imagine New York being like for these people. And he was saying that he represented Phantom Stallion. That's usually how it goes. It's not me. I represent this horse. And
Right.
I actually got to a what was it? I don't know, some kind of a gathering once, and my name tag said Phantom Stallion. So, and she said, we have no horses in the ready to read line. I really should talk to you about that. And so he left and called me, and he came back and he said, oh, Terry'd be willing to do that. So I had to shrug off. Again, writers watching this will know that feeling. Once you've been burned by an editor or a friend or a critique partner or a critique group on something, it's scary to go back in there. So I was kind of afraid to write the picture book, but I have 2 grandchildren now. So, and they're little. And I thought, you know what? There is so much misinformation about wild horses. I mean, so much. And about how their impact on their environment and things like that. I'm going to write a Phantom Stallions family story, but it's going to be, and it'll be fiction. That'll be very STEM focused. It will be looking at horses' impact on their environment. How do they interact with other wildlife? Things like that. And so I put together the words, and I am not an artist. My mom was, but I am not an artist, so I certainly didn't propose anything like that. And they liked it. It was a different reaction than the first time. They liked it a lot, and they asked me for 2 story ideas. So at this point, in January of 2026, I will have the first book that comes out will be The Stallion. It'll be talking about what he does. The art is beautiful. The artist was so great about working with me because since I'm around horses and I've been on the range, I was horribly picky.
Mhm.
I'm embarrassed. My mother would be angry. And then later there will be one called Feather the Foal. It will talk about this foal learning about echoes. And so there. And so I broke out of my usual genres.
Mhm.
And a book I had proposed years ago, and my agent went, and he sent it out, the idea out a lot of times, was nonfiction, well, a biography of Wild Horse Annie, the woman who got the legislation passed to stop killing wild horses. Of course, that's been amended, but I stopped in 1971 when the legislation passed.
Right.
And as I was researching her, stumbled across, well, Alicia Barber is a writer in Reno, spectacular. She knows if you tell her a spot on a sidewalk in Reno, she can tell you what happened there in
Right.
1920, if they had a sidewalk there. And if they didn't, she can still tell you what happened there in 1920.
Right.
And so I wrote to her because I thought she might have some ideas on research. And she said, oh, I got a letter from Trudy Larson, Dr. Trudy Larson, who was a doctor at the medical school. She's Wild Horse Annie's niece.
Really?
And it turned out my husband knew her because he worked for the newspaper, and she did some of the leading research on AIDS in in Nevada, in the world. Anyhow, as a very young doctor. So she had family papers. She got permission from the family to share those with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so and then I found the daughter of Wild Horse Annie's best friend who had pictures. That's what I say. I love research. It is so much fun. And so I interviewed both of those people, and I was able to gather some things. And there's speaking about misinformation, the mythology that grows up around notorious or famous women is incredible. It's amazing. Someday I'm going to write a book called Heroines and Hussies, which looks at that very thing. Like, okay, I'm not going to give you the whole book. I could. I love telling stories. But so that book will come out a little less than a year from now from the University of Nevada Press.
Oh, great.
And it was hard. It's still, haven't got the final edits back yet. It's very difficult to jump genres. The picture book has been difficult. The biography has been difficult, but I now have will have picture book, middle grade, YA, YA nonfiction, which is probably the best thing I've written, and it's out of print. And then I'll have a real biography. So I'm kind of an omnivore. I don't know
Mhm.
with words. I do, as you said, kind of stay in the West.
Right.
Even the fantasy, Seven Tears into the Sea, is on the North Coast, the rocky, overcast, thunder and lightning coast.
Atmosphere.
Yeah, I love rough beaches. Yeah,
Yes. It's a beautiful area, though. I love going up there.
me too.
So, with all of this varied work that you've got out there, where is the best place to find Terri Farley and where can all of your books be found?
Well, if you want Wild at Heart, my out of print book, you probably have to pay too much for it. And I'm hoping to get that back in print sometime soon. But you can find it online. You can find it. And I have one copy. I didn't know it was going to go out of print, so I gave them,
Yes.
authors, we do that. We just give things away, or you should read this. But I'm on Amazon, of
Hmm.
course. I am a big fan of independent bookstores. It broke my heart when Sundance closed, but but Grassroots Books and The Radical Cat and sometimes Thistle and Hemlock have my books. And if you go to my website, which is terrifarley.com or phantomstallion.com, they both go to the same place. There's a link to Simon and Schuster, and they do such a great job of showing all of my covers. Then, if you there's a thing to click a camera ready, publication ready cover, and they're beautiful. Someday I'm going to print them out and put them on the wall. But and they will link to all of the places where you can buy my books. I'm not good at publicity. Right now I am thinking of hiring outside help
Right.
because I've been up to now I've been leaning on both of my children. My son he's a journalism major but ended up working in social media
Hmm.
as a director, and my daughter is an educator, and she is brilliant on visualizing things. They have lives
Yep.
all of a sudden.
How dare they?
What is this? Help your mom. They have lives. So I'm thinking about getting some help with publicity. But if you go to my website or if you look for me on Facebook,
Hmm.
I'm pretty good about responding. I'm on Instagram, not as good responding, but still present. And then Blue Sky, which I'm falling in, and Threads.
Hmm.
Threads, I'm just dipping my toe in, but Blue Sky, I like a lot.
Hmm.
And I'm very fortunate that a lot of the wild horse photographers I know will let me publish their pictures. So I try to do that as well as political, literary stuff.
Yes, I have to say, I've been following you on Facebook for a while and I love the photos that you've been posting. It's
People
amazing.
are so generous. They really are.
Yes.
And they are doing a public service too, because
Hmm.
people may not know that the wild horses are still out there. They may not know that Nevada isn't just this desert.
Right.
It's beautiful. I mean, when I moved here from Southern California, it took me a while to fall in love with the high desert, but I fell hard. My favorite smell is sagebrush after a storm. Oh my gosh.
So nice.
It's amazing.
It really
And
is. Very pungent.
yeah, and when I have one more story. I have one reader who read my books in Germany, and she fell in love with the idea of Northern Nevada. And when she turned 18, her parents would not let her come to Nevada because all they knew was Las Vegas. And she said, I don't want to go to Las Vegas. I want to go up to wild horse country. And finally, when she was 18, she decided she was, by golly, going to go. And she came here. I hooked her up with a friend who rescues orphan wild horse foals. And she's out in the middle of the state, past Winnemucca. And so she worked. It's heartbreaking, even though my friend Lori has the best record of just about anybody of taking these wild babies and saving their lives. The survival rate is pretty low. But this girl, one of the Instagram pictures she posted for all of her friends back in Germany. She was standing like this, looking at the Nevada sky.
Mm,
And kids, having been a teacher, I know it can be tough to get kids to read sometimes, although
yes.
not as tough as people make it out. But once they find their thing, you got them.
Right.
And they, if it's horses, if it's fantasy, if it's dark, dark fantasy, if it's urban fantasy, once you've got them, if it's Harry Potter,
Mm-hmm.
you've got them and they get the confidence of finishing a book. And if it's a series, they get the confidence of finishing 5, 6, 7 books and they keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something I was going to say about that. Let's see. When I taught in downtown LA,
That's
it
a different
was
experience.
was a different experience. I didn't know until Easter that I was replacing a horse, not a horse, sort of replacing a teacher who had been beaten unconscious in her classroom.
Oh, no.
Nobody told me. They
Oh
hired
my
me
God.
right out of school.
Right.
I was teaching remedial reading, and it was very difficult. A lot of these were third generation gang kids, and my background was very different from theirs, but I liked them. And one of the things I learned was sad animal stories can touch their hard hearts, the hard little hearts.
Right.
And so as soon as I discovered that, and they liked it. They liked being sad because of a book, not because of real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I taught the red pony. The pony dies. There are vultures pecking out its eyeballs. And the little boy who raised him is running there and he grabs the vultures. And okay, I taught that. I taught some of the Call of the Wild type stories. And I would look out and I would see these tough kids who'd grown up so tough, sitting like this
Oh,
with their knuckles under their eyelids so their tears wouldn't fall.
I'm not crying.
I'm not gonna cry.
Right.
Um, I'm proud of this honor. I was one of only 2 teachers who didn't get her tires slashed that year.
Oh,
Um, the vice principal actually parked way off campus at a restaurant and walked to work because it was a tough school.
mm-hmm.
But I loved my kids and they came to like me. And my kids were fantastic. So I taught remedial reading and I taught journalism. And writing for kids is really, really rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
I get emails, I get letters. And then I just was it sounds like I'm bragging, but it's more about the genre.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people in our writing community who've had these same experiences,
Right.
kids who grow up or who get in touch with you some other way. If a book touches their heart, they love you. I
Mm-hmm.
was at a thing in Kentucky this summer and I had adult women coming up to me because they saw the Phantom Stallion poster where I was signing. And one was a neurosurgeon
Wow.
come up and burst into tears because those books, she was a weird kid, and those books were her happy place. It doesn't get any better than that.
That's amazing. It is so, I think that's what we all aspire to as writers is to make a connection with a reader like that.
Yeah,
And what we're trying to do with these podcasts is hopefully find some of those readers because it
yeah.
can be hard to get the word out. So it's been really wonderful talking to you today, and I would love to keep going. We may have to have you back on at some point, but I think we're about to run out of recording time here.
I have a feeling we are.
So I would like to thank Terri Farley for being here with us this week with the Nevada Author Network, a partnership with the Sierra Arts Foundation as we highlight the members of the Sierra Arts literary community, the wonderful authors we have here in Northern Nevada, which is such a beautiful place full of wild horses. And if you're not a Nevadan and you're coming across this podcast, definitely check out some of the books by the authors that we've highlighted. You can find these podcasts on our website at twomorebooks.com. That's TWOMOORE books.com. And in the meantime, again, I thank you for being here, Terri.
Thank
And
you for having me. This was fun.
hopefully we'll do this again, and maybe we'll have JT join us because I'm sure he's going to have some questions about your work as well.
Thank you.
So thank you, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Take care.